morning and welcome to Unitarian Universalist Church West. Welcome to this community of comfort, connection, challenge, and caring. My name is Kathy White, and as a member of the worship ministry team, I'm glad to be here leading the service today. If you are new to UU Church West, we want to give you an extra special welcome. Checking out a new spiritual community is a courageous act, and even in this time of virtual church. We would love to connect with you. So please send us a quick email message to visitor@uucw.org, and we will be in touch. Our meditation today is entitled A Prayer for Weary Times by the Reverend Margaret Weiss, who is minister at First Society of Ithaca in Ithaca, New York. Our reading today is called Unafraid by Adrian L.H. Graham, who is a member of the First Unitarian Church of Baltimore. He's currently pursuing a Master of Divinity degree at Wesley Theological Seminary in Washington, D.C. I'd like to introduce a skillful team of people who have contributed to today's service. Music is led by Jennifer Nicolosi, our lead music director. Dave Cicero, our director of Lifespan Religious Education, is also with us. Kelly Bogner, our publications coordinator, is working behind the scenes to manage the technology that makes our service possible. Our pulpit guest this morning is Philip Chard. After 32 years as president and CEO, Philip recently retired from Empathia Incorporated, a behavioral sciences firm providing health, safety, and productivity solutions for over 400 national organizations. He remains a practicing psychotherapist, is author of The Healing Earth and Nature's Ways. Philip wrote an award-winning weekly column in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel titled Out of My Mind. His next book, which is a compilation of his newspaper columns, is due out next year. I know you will enjoy his thoughts today on existential angst, facing one's demons in an uncertain world. Please join in singing our opening hymn, number 1012, When I'm Frightened by Shelley Jackson Denham, from our hymnal, Singing the Journey. The words are printed in the order of service that we send out each week with our Thursday e-news. Here's Jen.
When I am frightened, will you reassure me? When I'm uncertain, will you hold my hand? Will you be strong for me? Sing to me quietly. Will you share some of your stories with me? If you will show me compassion, then I may learn to care as you do. Then I may learn to care. When I am angry, will you still embrace me? When I am thoughtless, will you understand? Will you believe in me? Stand by me willingly. Will you share some of your questions with me? If you will show me acceptance, then I may learn to give as you do. Then I may learn to give. When I am troubled, will you listen to will show me commitment. Then I may learn to love as you do. Then I may learn to love.
And I invite you to join with me now in our chalice lighting words, reading them from the order of service if you've received it this week or anytime this month. If you haven't, I invite you to light your own chalice at home if you have one, or simply watch and listen and absorb. We know you're with us. We light this chalice with the courage of our deepest convictions to work for equity, racial justice, and peace. By its light, we pledge our love to aid our neighbors and help heal a hurting world. As it shines, we embrace the mystery and wonder of all that is and all that is yet to be. Now, a small amount of anxiety or worry about things in our lives that matter to us is very normal. We humans have evolved so that we notice when things are happening that might put us in danger. And so we're alerted to take action. Getting nervous before speaking in public or concern over whether you're prepared enough for a test that's upcoming, these all help us become more alert and hopefully improve our performance. As a teacher, I've learned and found ways and been trained in ways to help lower that anxiety level for students, because too much worry can be harmful. It often leads us to seize up or to shut down, or sometimes worse. The following story was written by an author and a publisher working to help kids of all ages understand and overcome this and other mental health concerns. Don't Feed the Worry Bug by Andy Green. A worry-woo tale. And our story today is being read with permission by the author, Andy Green. On a bench in a park on a bright sunny day, Wince, the monster of worry, let time slip away. He looked at the clock. It was 2:15, when Wince started to think about all he must do. He had homework and laundry and needed clean pants. He must bake some cookies for the worry-woo dance. Then Wince started to wonder. Did he leave the light on? Was his backside too poofy? Where had all his friends gone? And his worries kept growing till he heard a soft buzz that made goosebumps appear, for he knew what it was. There was only one creature that made such a sound. Around monsters that worry, it could often be found. Some call it the worry bug, and this is for sure. If you feed it a worry, it will always want more. Buzz, buzz, Wince heard as its noisy wings flapped. It flew up and down as he shooed and he clapped. It flittered and fluttered around Wince's ear. In the blink of an eye, more worries appeared. Did he feed his fish, Ted? Did his dog get a bone? Did he send all his woo mail? Did he bring his bike home? Should he go to the movies? Would he get a good grade? Will the weather be nice for the Woo Town parade? And with every new worry that came Wince's way, the worry bug shouted, "Hip, hip, hooray!" For the more that Wince worried, the more the bug grew. It nibbled and munched on his worry-filled stew. Wince said to the worry bug, "Perhaps you should leave?" He asked quite politely and even used please. Yet the worry bug stayed, for the two of them knew that Wince would still worry. That's what he would do. As day turned to night, Wince got ready for bed. The worry bug yawned and laid next to his head. But its buzzing kept Wince from going to sleep. So he tossed and he turned and he tried to count sheep. While thoughts of what if, could be, maybe, and might made Wince worry more. He was worried all night. When morning arrived, Wince looked up and gasped. The worry bug had grown. It had happened so fast. It used to be tiny, an annoyance quite small. Now it covered his kitchen, the ceiling, and wall. The bug's belly gurgled. Full of worries it was. No longer could Wince sweep it under the rug. Its buzzing went on, and Wince started to fret about all of the things that hadn't happened just yet. No cookies were baked. The laundry had piled. Wince hadn't done homework in such a long while. "Enough!" Wince exclaimed. "There must be a way to get rid of a worry bug. It can no longer stay." So Wince went to the library to read and take notes about catapults, cranes, and wagons, and goats. He plotted and mapped out a worry bug graph, then called in the experts, the worry bug staff. Together they studied this big, growing beast and built a bug net out of Wince's bed sheets. They were having such fun, Wince was worried no more, and soon he was baking and doing his chores. But just when Wince thought his work was complete, the worry bug buzzed, "I need something to eat." Wince looked at the bug. It was once again small, for while Wince had been busy, he hadn't worried at all. "You've ignored me all day," the tiny bug said, "and you haven't been worried, so I haven't been fed." Then the bug stomped his feet and buzzed all the more. Wince took a firm stand and showed it the door. "I've got things to do. I must work. I must play. I'm not going to worry, so go on your way." Buzz, buzz, Wince heard as the bug flew about, still trying to make one last worry come out. It flittered and fluttered around Wince's ear, yet Wince wouldn't give in, and it soon disappeared. Wince knew very well that this wasn't the end. The bug might be back if he worried again. But Wince would be ready, should he hear that buzz buzz, to say no to the worry bug, simply because Wince had learned that his worries got bigger each day when he allowed the worry bug to nibble away. So to all of you worriers, Wince wants you to know, don't feed the worry bug, or your worries will grow. The end. Are you like Wince, prone to let worries about all there is to do keep you from starting any one of those things? I can be. I sometimes refer to this as paralysis by analysis. Makes it sound more worthwhile. But have you ever noticed, too, that once you've started working on something, that's when the motivation and the creativity really kicks in? In our story, Wince finally did. He learned that. And I also noticed that Wince really counted on his friends and families to help him get started. So that's something I'm going to remember when I get stuck. And I hope you do too. Thank you.
Please join in singing hymn number 18, What Wondrous Love, by Fernando Ortega from our hymnal, Singing the Living Tradition.
What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul? When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down beneath my sorrow's crown, to be gathered round, oh my soul, friends to be gathered round, oh my soul. To love and to all friends I will sing, I will sing. To love and to all friends I will sing. To love and to all friends who pain and sorrow mend, with thanks unto the end I will sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end I will sing.
The meditation this morning is entitled Prayer for Weary Times by the Reverend Margaret Weiss. I invite you to take a deep breath and release it, and relax for a moment of quiet reflection. Holy One, our hearts are weary, are tired, and are breaking. Our hearts are stretching as they are pulled and pushed, bruised and battered by all the suffering and brokenness and pain. Our ears are ringing with harsh words, with yelling, with gunfire that echoes in our streets, and takes lives of innocence without cause. They're ringing with the affirmation that Black lives matter again and again until this idea is manifested in our legislation, our communities, and in our hearts. We have heard stories of equality and justice, but our eyes burn from the instances of inequality, racism, and injustice that illustrate we are still here and still far from where we hope to be. Our mouths speak words of courage, hope, and truth. And at times we find that words do no justice. The brokenness feels too big. Our bodies, our collective bodies, built for lifting one another up and built for holding each other in love. They're being used against one another as weapons, and the ammunition is hatred and fear. Spirit of life and love, in this time of dissonance, in this time of holy urgency to speak for those who cannot speak for themselves, help us to find our voice. Help us to see beyond this brokenness to a time of healing and true community. Help us to remember that the only journey toward healing is one that is paved through humility, acceptance of responsibility, and counteracting complacency. Ours is not a solitary journey, but one taken together, bolstered by deep listening and deeply rooted in love. May we find the strength needed for the journey here, in this place, and in all places where people gather for love, for humanity, and for justice. Shalom, blessed be, Ashe, and Amen. For special music today, Jen has selected a Scottish folk song called There's None to Soothe.
There's none to soothe my soul to rest. There's none, my Lord, of grief to share, or wake to joy this lonely breast, or light the gloom of dark despair. The voice of joy no more can cheer, the look of love no more can warm, since mute for eyes that voice so dear, and closed that I alone could charm.
The reading today is Unafraid by Adrian L.H. Graham. Look beneath the surface. Let not the several quality of a thing nor its worth escape thee. Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. I remember once leaving a party held at the house of some friends from church and being told, you shouldn't use the alleyways to get home. I had not been living in the city long, and I was in my early 20s. Everyone else at the gathering would have been older than I was, and most of them were white. All these years later, I no longer remember why we had gathered over a meal or who was present. I only remember their concern over my well-being and their counsel that I should walk by the well-lighted streets of our downtown neighborhood. I also remember being in the church office and being asked, why are you wearing your name tag? Again, I don't remember the particular circumstance of the day, just that I was the only Black person on staff at the time and the only man. It was an innocent enough question, and yet it struck me in its unknowing simplicity. You see, I didn't have any fear of walking home through the alleyways all those years ago. As a young Black man, I was one that other people would be wary of in the dark. Other people would see me approaching, wearing my hoodie in the darkness, and they would clutch their purses. They would cross the street. They would not offer any hello in response to mine. And when you're the only Black man in a sea of whiteness, it doesn't matter that you're on staff. It doesn't matter that the keychain around your neck has the keys to every locked door. It doesn't matter that the parking lot is well lit. Purses still get clutched and people still cross the street and hellos still get lost in the void. My name tag is my validation and my shield. People who know me personally often express shock and disbelief when I speak these truths to them because they know me. But you shouldn't have to know me to be unafraid. And now I would like to introduce Philip Chard this morning with his message on existential angst, facing one's demons in an uncertain world.
Thank you. Good morning. Thanks for joining us. Introducing this topic, fear comes in many flavors. Reflexive fear in the face of an actual threat, be that a physical or emotional kind of threat, triggers what we all know as the fight or flight response, in which we marshal our resources to confront or escape the peril at hand. Generally, this sort of fear is as temporary as the danger that creates it and is often referred to as rational fear. It makes sense. So-called irrational fear emerges in what we term phobias. This occurs when one's fright is out of proportion to the actual threat itself. Like take claustrophobia, for example, the fear of closed-in spaces. Sure, one might become trapped in an elevator, for example, but the probability is small and the ultimate consequence almost always benign. So we call it an irrational fear. Then there's chronic fear, which is often labeled anxiety. This variant can be specific or general. Being anxious about giving a speech, like today, for instance, is confined to one situation. However, anxiety can attach itself to a wide array of circumstances, morphing into a condition that we call generalized anxiety disorder. Folks with this malady feel moderately anxious much of the time. In contrast, the fear we call existential angst is characterized by a profound and persistent dread, a type of foreboding that assaults what some philosophers refer to as the ground of being. The term existential angst comes from Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard. He used it to describe a profound and deeply embedded spiritual condition of insecurity, trepidation, and despair, one where the individual feels inconsequential and very vulnerable, sort of like a tiny speck on a small planet in an immense cosmos. So, what distinguishes existential angst from the other flavors of fear? Well, while it shares some of the psychological and emotional aspects of these others, angst adds a deep spiritual element. In listening to clients I've worked with who are beset by this conundrum, I often hear self-descriptive terms like insignificant and pointless and alone and helpless. This primordial fearfulness stems from their perception that life is a series of random events without clear purpose or intent. They feel at the mercy of interpersonal forces beyond their control, ones that will inexorably lead them and those they love to death and oblivion. As one told me, existence is painful and unfair, and that's fear talking. While anecdotal, there's growing evidence that the COVID-19 pandemic is generating a surge in existential angst. Listening to many of my colleagues in the mental health and ministerial fields, I hear their concerns about the spiritual wounding being suffered by clients and congregants as a result of this contagion. Granted, many of us are reacting to the pandemic with the usual suspects: depression, anger, moodiness, worry, hypervigilance, and the rest. But when angst sets in, these day-to-day perturbations take a back seat to a profound and deeply unsettling dread about existence itself. So what triggers existential angst? Sometimes the catalyst is a single traumatic, life-altering event, such as a sudden and horrific tragedy, either experienced directly by oneself or witnessed by oneself. The loss of a close comrade in arms during combat is one example. A gruesome or life-threatening accident might be another. Sometimes the tragic death of a child or other loved one also provides this trigger. Psychologists refer to these soul-searing events as one-trial learning, wherein the trauma is instantly branded on the brain and also on the soul. Another catalyst for existential angst is a chronic, inescapable sense of danger. For some, the pandemic serves as this kind of a trigger, but it could also emerge from a terminal illness, intense or unremitting physical or emotional suffering, or ongoing victimization. Regarding the pandemic, the combination of an invisible enemy, fear of the unknown arising from uncertainty about its course, and the loss of control and personal autonomy imposed by its perils, these all combine to concoct a very potent kind of spiritual toxin. Sufficient exposure to the COVID tragedy can catalyze fear about existence itself. One can end up feeling at odds with life. Finally, some folks sort of wander into existential angst inadvertently. Rather than suffering some sudden trauma or corrosive fear, they think themselves into a state of dread. You know, deep thinkers and spiritual seekers who ponder existence, often through reading and discussions and their own periods of introspection and contemplation, sometimes conclude life is without meaning or intention. If this conclusion is accompanied by a sense of despair, then existential angst usually follows. You know, I recall that bronze statue most of us have seen called The Thinker. And when I gazed into the thinker's face, I see angst more than contemplation. You know, maybe I'm projecting, but sometimes that's where deep thinking can also take us. You know, in M. Night Shyamalan's, I hope I said that right, his movie called Signs, Mel Gibson plays a former priest who lost his beloved wife in a seemingly random and tragic auto-pedestrian accident. This profound and sudden loss leaves him not only in a state of mourning, but also one of existential angst. In a conversation he has with his younger brother, played by Joaquin Phoenix, Gibson's character asserts there are two kinds of people in the world. First, those who believe someone or something in the spiritual world is looking out for them. And second, folks who feel we are all alone and entirely on our own, naked to the elements, as it were. The believers, he claimed, are filled with hope, while the non-believers are consumed with fear. As this scene depicts, one's spiritual beliefs do influence susceptibility to existential angst. This is not to suggest, however, that all atheists, for example, are riddled with dread. They may believe in something else that affords an existential comfort, such as nature or a transcendent life purpose or love itself. And religious or spiritual beliefs don't afford an impenetrable shield warding off this dread. However, angst is, at its core, a statement about the beliefs and meaning one assigns to existence. The final factor at play is one's innate emotional temperament. Highly sensitive persons, which comprise about 20% of the populace, prove more susceptible to existential angst than their less vulnerable counterparts. As the term implies, highly sensitive individuals are very tuned in and responsive to emotionally charged happenings. These so-called empaths feel more deeply than most, meaning their psychological shields, so to speak, are less robust. So when their world suddenly morphs from safe to dangerous, from benevolent to malicious, their spiritual tectonic plates sort of rupture and an existential earthquake rocks the soul. Philosophers have as much to say about existential dread as shrinks do, and they assert that those enduring this condition experience something called, in the Latin, horror vacui. This Latin term means literally a fear of emptiness. This emptiness is an inner vacuum that forms when someone loses hope, meaning, and purpose, sinking into despair. It occurs when the ego, or small self, if you will, begins to realize how insignificant, powerless, and vulnerable it is in the face of the creation and the myriad and mysterious forces it unleashes in our lives. Now, faced with this horror vacui, this fear of emptiness, some blindly embrace a rigid set of beliefs or dogma. If the ego can be lulled into certainty, then it stops freaking out, more or less, and sort of play off the old adage, certainty is bliss. Now, control is a holy grail for most of us. We want to believe we are the masters of our destinies. So when we begin feeling that such mastery is an illusion, which happens when we have existential angst, then that sort of floor beneath our feet begins to creak and crack, prompting some to take refuge in a rock-solid theology or a set of unchallenged beliefs. So, many of us have asked ourselves this fundamental question: what's the point of life? Those with existential dread feel that life is but a joke, and that joke is on them. So, having described what it is, what can one do about this painful condition? Well, first off, you can adopt a more myopic approach, if you will, one promoted by Peanuts cartoonist Charles Schulz, who stated, quote, "I have a new philosophy. I'm going to dread one day at a time." While a bit amusing, perhaps, there's also some wisdom in that. When dread creeps into one's consciousness, Redemption requires facing this demon head on. It's not something we can compartmentalize or sweep under the rug. And that means pursuing a spiritual path rather than solely a psychological one. When in the dungeon of dread, one confronts a pivotal choice, whether to live in fear or to search for a way out, for hope. As Ralph Waldo Emerson reminded us, quote, "He who is not every day conquering some fear has not learned the secret of life, because those fears can be with us every day." It seems a requirement for becoming fully human that we must face our inner demons, this particular one being among the most onerous and formidable that we may come across. Becoming stranded in existential dread can lead to a sort of living death. As philosopher Bertrand Russell stated, quote, "Those who fear life are already 3 parts dead." So facing existential angst can be among the greatest spiritual challenges we come up against. And how does one confront so great an adversary? Well, because angst is a spiritual conundrum, I often encourage those so afflicted to pursue meditation, spiritual retreats, nature quests, consciousness-raising disciplines of various kinds, like yoga and Tai Chi, or religious practices consistent with their own values and faith tradition. And while not available outside of clinical trials in the United States, interestingly enough, psychedelic therapy has proven surprisingly helpful for individuals with existential angst caused by emotional trauma and terminal illness. In some instances in these clinical studies, a single professionally guided trip, if you will, using psilocybin, a hallucinogenic mushroom, has eliminated dread altogether. So this is an area that my field obviously is exploring and needs to explore more deeply. All of these approaches strive to create one particular antidote, if you will, to existential angst, and that is a transcendent experience, something that connects us with a higher power or a cosmic order that we sense, not just think about. In an intuitive way, we seem to know, as author and humanist Marilyn Ferguson put it, that, quote, "the other side of every fear is freedom." Not freedom from danger or death, as this does not exist, obviously, but as Emerson termed it, quote, "deliverance from fear," unquote. In this sense, then, existential angst is more than just an adversary. It is an opportunity to transcend one of the most elemental and darkly powerful spiritual forces in the human experience, one that controls many lives, and that's fear. And in doing so, to reclaim one's life from that fear. Now, I don't say this as some glib nostrum designed to, reframe one's perspective on a very debilitating condition, but as a truth I've actually witnessed many times over. What I've recognized in my own life, as well as those of many clients and friends and loved ones, is that when someone suffering from angst connects in a soul-felt way with the creative power and intelligence innervating the cosmos, they undergo a metamorphosis. A woman I'll call Anna was such a soul. After years of therapy and various medications and a plethora of self-help efforts, all falling short, the agent of her conversion was a deeply spiritual attunement with the natural world. At my urging, rather than approaching nature interaction as a way to find some answer to her angst, I encouraged her to simply be present in the natural world and let it find her. Eventually, what found Anna was an epiphany, a transcendent spiritual awakening. As she put it, quote, "I was walking in the woods with my mind full of fear and agitation, and eventually I came to a stream, and then felt this strange kind of intuitive impulse to just lay down and kind of curl up. An impulse many of us have felt sometimes when deeply afraid. Despite the beautiful surroundings, at first, Anna remained lost in her dire and very ominous thoughts. She said, I kept thinking I can't live like this in fear. But then, she noticed, the sound of the stream began to take over her mind. As she put it, it felt like it was flowing through me, washing away that fear. Embraced by something stronger than her dread, a spiritual door opened to Anna, and in what she described as an act of surrender, she stepped through it. She and the cleansing waters, they became one. As she later told me, quote, I began feeling like everything made sense again somehow in a way that I just can't quite describe. So powerful was this contact with the sacred that Anna remained beside the stream for a long time, her mind void of thoughts, her spirit at rest. To this day, she returns there often. As she put it, I don't see life as my enemy anymore. I feel a part of it, which is precisely what someone with existential angst needs to do. Inhabit a sustaining kinship with the creation itself through a felt connection, or what Martin Buber called an I-thou relationship. Now, many of you who know me recognize I'm a persistent, perhaps even annoying proponent of nature interaction as a doorway to the sacred. But it's not for everyone. In fact, most people must experiment with a variety of experiences before discovering which one will open that portal to the spiritual mystery that enervates existence itself. Regardless of the path one follows, it must lead to a common destination, hope. Hope based on a soulful bond with something greater than oneself. I'm not speaking of the kind of hope predicated on the expectation that one's life will be all sugar and spice. It is not a hope linked to an individual gratification or success or fortune or fame. Rather, this hope grows from feeling a part of something mysterious, creative, and spiritually vibrant. You can call that something whatever you like. God, the ground of being, the universal soul, the standard model of physics, the Tao, the force. The words mostly just get in the way. It is through this relationship, this sacred bond, that we experience a hope greater than the one derived merely from our own needs and wants. Now, this hope, it exists in many places. The splendor of nature, the innocence of a child, within beautiful music and art, through a lover's tender embrace, inside the stillness of pure awareness, unimpeded by nattering thoughts, in spiritual communion with others, and in moments of kindness, both given and received. Its elemental power is in transporting us out of the spiritual echo chamber called an ego, which is where angst takes up residence most of the time, and into that which is transcendent and numinous. You know, in the science fiction movie Starman, the protagonist, an extraterrestrial being who becomes stranded in our world, pronounces us a paradoxical species, noting that, quote, you are at your best when things are at their worst. And while we may be approaching what seems our worst due to the pandemic, existential angst can be among the most perilous crises faced by the human psyche and soul. Many succumb to it, resigning themselves to living in fear and cynicism, But those who do not capitulate to this fear sometimes manage to find that best in themselves and in the creation. They use this painful and sometimes harrowing experience to be reborn into a new relationship with existence, one that affords meaning and purpose and faith. When it was suggested to Joseph Campbell, the late great anthropologist, that we are all seeking the meaning of life, he replied, quote, "I don't think we're looking for the meaning of life. I think we're seeking the experience of feeling fully alive. And once we enter the experience of feeling fully alive, informed by a soul-felt connection with the sacred, then existential angst dissipates like fog scattered before the warming rays of a rising sun." Thank you, and be well.
Thank you, Philip, for your inspiring words and thought-provoking message. Offertory music is Arietta by Edvard Grieg.
Each week, we invite you to give generously to support Unitarian Universalist Church West and its many ministries of caring, compassion, racial justice and social justice, learning, and spiritual growth. We also include among those ministries the work of our Split the Plate partner organizations. You can make a gift online by going to UUCW.org and clicking on the Donate tab. You can also give via text message simply by sending UUCW to 73256. And it's possible to mail in a check to make your gift. Watch your screen because all the information about the ways to give will appear there in just a moment. In the meantime, thank you. We appreciate so much your generosity and your commitment to UU Church West.
We thank you for your generosity. Your gifts help make our congregation strong and vibrant. Our closing words come from Tanya Marquez. Do not fear agitation. Do not fear agitation, for agitation is the rhythm of life itself, to be put into motion, to be stirred. Do not fear the movements that decenter what you always thought permanent. You carry within the center of your understanding the compass to show you the way. Carry with you the love that will hold you, the vision that will guide you, the relationships to all beings and the world that will ground you. Go in peace and in gentle agitation to stir this world to the side of love. Shalom. Blessed be, Ashe and Amen.